Stand your ground. We saw it play out last September when a man was almost carjacked. Instead, he pulled his own weapon, shot and killed one of his attackers. That carjacking victim was not charged because of Tennessee's law that a person has the right to defend himself.
In Arkansas, that's not the case. In fact, there is no stand your ground law, but soon there could be.
There's a stand your ground bill moving through the legislature right now, but it's not guaranteed to pass. Fox 13's Jackie Massey is live in downtown Memphis. Jackie, I know you talked to one of the co-sponsors about this bill, why he thinks this time it will pass.
Daryl, right now in Arkansas, people have the duty to retreat first if they're threatened. They can't use deadly force. But the co-sponsor tells me with this new bill, they'll be able to use deadly force first.
If someone comes and threatens you and you believe that your life is in danger, you have the ability to defend yourself with lethal force if necessary.
State Representative Aaron Pilkington says the time is now for the people of Arkansas to be able to defend themselves. He's all in favor of a new stand your ground bill, which, if passed, would mean people could fight instead of flight. That's if the person using deadly force is threatened, not doing anything illegal, and is not the aggressor. He says he would be able to protect his family better if this becomes a law.
If I need to defend them, while we're, out and about, I would much rather be able to know that I've got the stand your ground law to rely on than hoping that I don't have a prosecutor who's going to say, well, you should have retreated with you and your pregnant wife, and we're going to throw you in jail for manslaughter.
2 years ago, a similar bill failed. Opponents like State Senator Stephanie Flowers argues a stand your ground law would create unintended consequences. She worries this would allow a private citizen to become the judge, jury, and executioner. Fox 13 talked to residents in Arkansas who agree with her.
Sometimes some people just want to use that as an excuse to do something stupid.
Representative Pilkington argues it would make people feel more safe. He says the prosecutors, sheriffs, and police associations are neutral on the bill.
I think you're going to see a decrease in the amount of assaults and things like that with deadly weapons because you're going to have people realizing that the risk is not there. The bill will move to the Senate floor next, and if it passes, it'll go to the House Judiciary Committee. Now, I reached out to the original bill owner, but I didn't hear back from him yet. Reporting live downtown, Jackie Massey, Fox 13 News.
All right, thank you, Jackie. We checked. Other states in the Mid-South already have stand your ground laws. In Tennessee, the Castle Doctrine allows you to use deadly force to protect yourself from an intruder inside your home. A car is also considered an extension of your home. In Mississippi, there is a no duty to retreat law in place. It means you can protect yourself from personal injury or death in any place you are legally allowed to be. This law does not apply if someone is not breaking into your home or you are not inside your home.